Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Titan and watched the stars through the massive view screen. The ship moved quietly through empty space at the edge of human territory. 6 months had passed since Earth's fleet began these deep space patrols, and they had found nothing but empty systems and dead rocks. Jake rubbed his tired eyes and wondered if sending 12 ships this far from home was worth the cost. The bridge crew worked at their stations with practiced silence. Communications Officer Lisa Park monitored the radio frequencies while Navigator Ben Tucker plotted their next jump coordinates. Chief Science Officer Dr. Alex Kane studied sensor readings from the last 3 systems they had visited. Everyone hoped to find something interesting, but nobody expected much. Lisa Park suddenly sat up straight at her station. Her headset crackled with an unusual sound as she quickly adjusted her controls. The signal was weak and broken, but definitely artificial. She had been listening to space static for months, and this was different. Her fingers moved fast across her control board as she tried to clean up the transmission. "Admiral Morrison, sir. I have something strange here," Lisa said without looking away from her screens. "There's a signal coming from outside our mapped territory. It's not human, and it's not natural background noise." Jake moved to her station and listened to the crackling sounds coming through her speakers. The pattern was clearly intelligent, but unlike anything in Earth's databases. The signal faded in and out like it was traveling a very long distance or being blocked by something. "Can you clean it up, Lisa?" Jake asked. "Get Dr. Kane over here, too. If this is what I think it is, we need to decode it fast." Dr. Alex Kane hurried over with his portable analysis equipment. He was a thin man with gray hair who had spent his life studying alien signals that never came. Now his hands shook slightly as he connected his devices to Lisa's communication array. This could be humanity's first contact with alien intelligence. They two worked together for over an hour while the bridge crew watched in tense silence. Slowly the broken signal became clearer. Strange words in an unknown language began to emerge from the static. The computer worked to find patterns and create a translation matrix. "It's a language pattern, Admiral," Alex said with excitement. "The mathematical structure suggests high intelligence. Give me another 30 minutes, and I should have basic translation working." Jake nodded and called Captain Maria Santos from the U's Phoenix. She arrived on the bridge just as Alex's computer made its first successful translation. The alien words came through the speakers in mechanical English. "Help us please anyone who can hear this message. Our world burns and our people die. The Krethic Dominion destroys everything we built. We are the Zelani, and we cannot fight them. If there are others in the stars who know peace, please help us before it is too late." The bridge fell completely silent. Every person stopped what they were doing and stared at the speakers. The message repeated several times with small changes, but the meaning stayed the same. Somewhere in space, an alien race was being destroyed by another alien race, and they were calling for help. "My God," Captain Santos whispered. "They're being wiped out, and they're asking anyone who can hear them for help." Dr. Kane worked furiously to get more information from the signal. "The transmission is coming from approximately 40 light years away, Admiral. Based on the signal strength and the way it's breaking up, I'd say their situation is desperate. This might be their last working transmitter." Jake studied the star charts that Ben Tucker brought up on the main screen. 40 light years was at the very edge of human jump drive capability. It would take 3 weeks of hard travel to reach the source of the signal. 3 weeks during which an entire alien civilization might die. "What do we know about this Krethic Dominion they mentioned?" Jake asked. "Nothing, sir," Alex replied. "This is our first indication that there are multiple alien species out there. The Zelani sound peaceful, but these Krethic seem to be conquerors." Commander Steve Rogers spoke up from his position near the tactical displays. Admiral, we should contact Earth Command before we do anything. This is way beyond our mission parameters. We're explorers, not a rescue fleet. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Price disagreed. By the time we get authorization from Earth and send for backup, these Zilani will be extinct. If we're going to help them, we need to leave now. Jake looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These people had volunteered for humanity's first deep space mission, knowing they might face the unknown. Now the unknown was asking for their help. Dr. Kane, how much can you tell about the Zilani from their transmission? Jake asked. Alex studied his readings carefully. Their technology is definitely advanced, Admiral. The signal processing and power systems are beyond current human capabilities, but their language patterns suggest a very peaceful culture. They use words that translate to cooperation and harmony, much more than words about conflict or war. What about these Krethik? Captain Santos asked. The Zilani described them as overwhelming force and brutal efficiency, Alex said. They seem to be a military empire that conquers other species. The Zilani had no experience with this kind of warfare. Lisa Park had been monitoring the signal continuously, and now she looked up with alarm. Admiral, the transmission is getting weaker. Their power source might be failing, or their transmitter could be under attack. Jake made his decision. He had become an admiral by trusting his instincts, and right now, every instinct told him that humanity's first contact with alien life would define how other species saw them forever. They could be the humans who helped, or the humans who ignored a cry for help. Then plot a course to the source of that transmission. Maximum jump speed. Jake ordered. Steve, send a message to all ships in the fleet. We're responding to an alien distress call. Sir, Commander. Rogers said carefully, our ships weren't designed for major combat operations. We have explorers and light patrol vessels. If these Krethak have been conquering other species, they probably have serious military power. Jake looked at the tactical display showing their 12 ships. The U-East Titan was the largest, but even it was built more for long-range exploration than fighting. The other ships were smaller science vessels and escorts. Against an unknown alien military force, they might not stand a chance. You're right, Steve, Jake said, but look at it this way. The Zilani have advanced technology, but they're losing badly to the Krethik. That suggests the Krethik rely on brute force rather than advanced tactics. Human military doctrine might give us advantages they don't expect. Dr. Kane brought up his analysis of human versus alien development patterns. Admiral, there's something else to consider. Earth is what scientists call a death world. Our planet tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We evolved as hunters and survivors. Most alien species probably evolved on much easier worlds. What does that mean for us? Captain Santos asked. It means we might be the first species these Krethik have encountered that actually knows how to fight, Alex explained. If the Zilani are typical of galactic civilization, then the Krethik have been conquering civilizations that never learned warfare. The fleet began jumping toward the Zilani system within 6 hours. Each jump took them further from Earth and deeper into unknown space. Jake stood on his bridge and watched the stars change patterns as they moved toward humanity's first alien war. During the long journey, Jake met with his ship captains to plan their approach. Captain Danny White of the UES Storm suggested they study everything the Zilani could tell them about Krethik tactics. Captain Helen Brooks of the UES Falcon recommended detailed reconnaissance before engaging any enemy forces. The signal from the Zilani grew stronger as they got closer, but also more desperate. The aliens reported that their orbital defenses had fallen and Krethik ships were bombing their cities. Their population was hiding in underground shelters while their world died above them. 3 weeks after receiving the first signal, the human fleet arrived at the edge of the Zilani system. What they found there would change everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. Admiral Jake Morrison was about to learn that sometimes the greatest strength comes from a world that never stops trying to kill you. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zalani system and immediately went to full alert. Admiral Jake Morrison stared at the main screen in shock. The system was full of massive alien warships that surrounded a blue-green planet like hungry predators. Explosions flashed on the planet's surface as the enemy continued their bombardment. "Jesus Christ," whispered Captain Maria Santos from her position beside Jake. "There must be over 100 ships out there." Chief Science Officer Dr. Alex Kane was already scanning the enemy fleet with every sensor the Titan possessed. The alien vessels were enormous compared to human ships. Some of the largest ones stretched over 2 kilometers long and bristled with weapon systems. Their dark hulls reflected no light as they moved in slow formation around the dying world below. "Admiral, I'm reading massive energy signatures from those ships," Dr. Kane reported. "Their power output is incredible, but their engine systems seem primitive. They're using basic fusion drives that are at least 50 years behind human technology." Navigator Ben Tucker brought up a tactical display showing the positions of all enemy vessels. The aliens had established a complete blockade around the planet with overlapping fields of fire. Nothing could get to the surface without fighting through multiple layers of defenses. Lisa tried to contact the Zalani, Jake ordered. "Let them know. Help has arrived." Communications Officer Lisa Park worked frantically to establish contact with the planet below. After several minutes, she managed to connect with a weak signal coming from somewhere underground. The voice that answered spoke in the strange alien language they had been studying during their journey. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet," Jake said into the communication system. "We received your distress call, and we're here to help." The response came back in broken but understandable English. "Admiral Morrison, we thank. The spirits you have come. I am Elder Zephys of the Zalani Council. Our world dies and our people hide in deep shelters. The Krethek have destroyed our cities and killed millions of our kind." Jake looked at the tactical display showing the massive enemy fleet. 12 human ships against over 100 alien warships seemed like an impossible fight. But something about the enemy formation bothered him. Their ships moved in rigid patterns without any attempt at concealment or tactical flexibility. "Elder Zephys, can you tell us about the Krethek military capabilities?" Jake asked. "We need to understand how they fight. They attack with overwhelming numbers, Admiral Morrison. Their ships are powerful, but slow. They form straight lines and fire their weapons until everything is destroyed. We had defensive platforms and shield generators, but they simply poured energy into them until they failed." Dr. Kane had been studying the enemy ships during the conversation, and now he brought his findings to Jake. "Admiral, the Krethek vessels are definitely powerful, but they seem to be built like flying fortresses. Heavy armor, heavy weapons, but no advanced maneuvering systems. Their targeting computers appear to be very basic." Captain Helen Brooks of the reconnaissance ship UES Falcon had been conducting detailed scans from the edge of the system. Her report confirmed what Dr. Kane suspected. "Admiral, the enemy ships are massive, but they turn like asteroids. Our fighter craft could fly circles around them. Also, their weapon systems seem to fire in fixed patterns. No adaptive targeting or predictive algorithms." Jake studied the tactical situation carefully. The human fleet was heavily outnumbered, but they had advantages the enemy didn't expect. Human ships were fast and maneuverable, with advanced targeting systems and flexible tactics. The Krethek appeared to fight like ancient armies, with overwhelming force but little tactical sophistication. "Elder Zephys, tell me about your people," Jake said. "What kind of world do the Zalani come from? We evolved on a peaceful world, Admiral. Morrison. Solara Prime has gentle weather, abundant food, and no dangerous predators. Our people developed technology through cooperation and scientific advancement. We had no need to learn warfare because our world never threatened us. Dr. Kane looked up from his analysis with understanding in his eyes. Admiral, I think I know what we're dealing with. The Shalani evolved on what we would call a paradise world. No environmental pressures, no predators, no resource competition. They never developed survival instincts or military thinking. What about the Krethek? Captain Santos asked. Based on their tactics, I'd say they come from a similar background, Dr. Kane replied. They have superior numbers and firepower, but they fight like a species that never faced real resistance. They probably conquered dozens of peaceful civilizations using pure, overwhelming force. Jake nodded slowly as the picture became clear. The galaxy was apparently full of species that evolved on easy worlds where survival was never a challenge. They developed advanced technology, but never learned to fight efficiently. The Krethek had become conquerors by being slightly more aggressive than their victims, but they had never faced a species that actually understood warfare. Lisa put me through to the entire fleet, Jake ordered. All ship captains need to hear. This, when the communication link was established, Jake addressed his small fleet scattered around the edge of the system. This is Admiral Morrison. We're facing an enemy that has superior numbers and firepower, but inferior tactics and flexibility. These aliens fight like they've never encountered real resistance. We're going to show them what happens when they attack someone who can fight back. Captain Danny White of the U Storm was the first to respond. Admiral, what are your orders? We start with reconnaissance in force, Jake replied. Helen, take the Falcon and probe their outer defenses. I want to see how they react to a fast-moving threat. Everyone else maintain position, but be ready to move quickly. The U.S. Falcon accelerated toward the enemy fleet, using its advanced stealth systems to avoid detection. Captain Brooks guided her ship between the outer patrol vessels, while her sensors recorded everything about Krethek technology and tactics. What she discovered surprised everyone. Admiral, the enemy ships have powerful sensors, but they're not designed for tracking fast-moving targets, Brooks reported. Their scanning systems seem optimized for detecting large stationary objects. Also, their communication systems are incredibly slow. It takes them several minutes to coordinate responses between ships. Jake smiled grimly as he realized the magnitude of the enemy's disadvantage. The Krethek had built their fleet to fight other species like themselves. Slow, methodical opponents who would stand still and trade shots until one side was destroyed. They were completely unprepared for human hit-and-run tactics. All ships listened carefully, Jake broadcast to his fleet. We're not going to fight these aliens on their terms. Human doctrine is speed, surprise, and concentrated firepower. We hit them hard where they don't expect it, then disappear before they can respond. Elder Zephys had been listening to the human tactical discussions with growing amazement. Admiral Morrison, your people speak of warfare with great knowledge. How did your species learn such things? Jake looked at Dr. Kane, who nodded encouragingly. It was time to explain what made humans different from apparently every other species in the galaxy. Elder Zephys, our world tried to kill us every day for millions of years, Jake said. We evolved as hunters and survivors on a planet full of predators, natural disasters, and resource competition. Every human alive today carries the genetic memory of ancestors who fought for survival against impossible odds. Your world sounds terrible, Admiral Morrison, Elder Zephys replied with what sounded like genuine sympathy. It made us strong, Jake said simply. And right now that strength is the only thing standing between your people and extinction. Captain Santos had been studying the enemy bombardment patterns, and now she brought an urgent report to Jake. Admiral of the Krethek are systematically destroying everything on the planet's surface. At their current rate, the Zalani won't survive another week, even in their underground shelters. Jake looked at his 12 ships and the massive enemy fleet that surrounded the Zalani homeworld. The odds were terrible, but the human fleet had advantages the enemy couldn't understand. They were fast where the Krethek were slow. They were flexible where the Krethek were rigid. Most importantly, they understood that sometimes you had to take risks to achieve victory. Signal all ships, Jake ordered. We begin the attack in 6 hours. The Krethek are about to learn why you should never corner a predator from Earth. The human fleet began to move into attack positions as Jake planned humanity's first interstellar war. On the planet below, millions of Zalani huddled in their shelters, waiting to see if the strange aliens from a death world could save them from destruction. The Krethek continued their bombardment, unaware that they were about to face an enemy unlike anything they had encountered in their long history of conquest. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on his bridge and prepared to show the galaxy what humans could do when someone threatened the innocent. The Deathworlders were about to announce their arrival in galactic affairs with weapons fire and righteous fury. The first human attack began at exactly 0600 ship time when Captain Rick Davis led a squadron of fighters from the UES Storm toward a Krethek supply convoy. The enemy ships moved in a perfect straight-line formation, completely predictable and totally exposed. Davis smiled grimly as he armed his missiles and accelerated to attack speed. The human fighters struck like lightning, hitting the convoy from 3 different angles simultaneously. Their missiles tore through Krethek shields that were designed to stop the slow, heavy weapons used by other galactic species. The enemy escort ships tried to respond, but their massive gun turrets moved too slowly to track the fast human craft. Direct hits on all targets, Davis reported, as his squadron disappeared back into space. Enemy convoy destroyed with no human casualties. The aliens never even got a shot off. Admiral Jake Morrison watched the attack results from the bridge of the UE's Titan and felt a cold satisfaction. The Krethek were learning that their overwhelming firepower meant nothing if they couldn't hit their targets. Human fighters could dance around the massive alien ships like wolves attacking elephants. Signal from Elder Zephy's Admiral reported. Communications Officer Lisa Park. The Krethek bombardment has stopped. Their ships are moving into defensive formations. Jake nodded as he studied the tactical displays. The enemy was confused and scared. They had never faced an opponent who could strike without warning and disappear before retaliation. The rigid Krethek military doctrine had no answer for human guerrilla tactics. Time for Phase 2, Jake announced. General Kate Johnson, you're cleared for boarding operations. General Johnson commanded the fleet's marine contingent from her position aboard the UES Vanguard. She had spent the last 6 hours studying Krethek ship designs and planning the most audacious military operation in human history. Her Marines would board and capture enemy vessels using tactics that no alien species had ever conceived. Roger. Admiral, Johnson replied, my teams are ready. These aliens are about to learn why humans are the scariest thing in the galaxy. The boarding operation began when Captain Laver Thompson used the Vanguard's stealth systems to approach a disabled Krethek destroyer. The alien ship was over 1 kilometer long, with armor thick enough to stop nuclear weapons, but it had never been designed to resist enemies who could get inside. Commander Paul Anderson led the first boarding party through a breach cut by human plasma torches. The Marines moved through the alien ship like a coordinated pack of predators. They used night vision equipment and sound dampeners to become invisible death in the darkened corridors. The Krethek crew never knew what hit them. The aliens were larger and stronger than humans, but they were completely unprepared for close quarters combat. They had weapons, but no training in how to fight inside their own ships. The human Marines used speed coordination and ruthless efficiency to overwhelm every defense. Ship secured. Anderson reported 20 minutes after the boarding. Began. We have 40 Krethek prisoners and complete control of all ship systems. These aliens fight like they've never seen real combat before. Dr. Alex Kane had requested live Krethek prisoners for study, and now he had his chance to understand humanity's enemy. The captured aliens were brought aboard the Titan, where Kane could examine them safely. What he discovered shocked everyone who heard his report. Admiral, the Krethek are not evil monsters, Kane announced to the senior staff. They're just another peaceful species that happens to be more aggressive than their neighbors. They expanded through the galaxy by conquering civilizations even less military than themselves. They've never faced real resistance. Captain Maria. Santos stared at the alien prisoners through the observation window. You mean they're not warriors either? Not by human standards, Kane replied. Their homeworld was apparently as peaceful as the Zelani planet. They developed superior technology and used it to intimidate other species into surrender. Most of their conquests never involved actual fighting. Jake studied the psychological profiles Kane had developed from interrogating the prisoners. The Krethek saw themselves as bringing order to chaotic galaxy. They genuinely believed that conquest was better than the alternative of letting primitive species destroy themselves. From their perspective, they were civilizing barbarians, not committing genocide. They have no idea what they're dealing with, do they? Jake said quietly. None whatsoever, Admiral, Kane confirmed. To them, we're just another primitive species with unusual tactics. They don't understand that we evolved specifically to kill other intelligent beings. The conversation was interrupted by urgent reports from the reconnaissance ships. Captain Helen Brooks had detected massive Krethek reinforcements jumping into the system. Over 200 additional enemy ships were moving to reinforce the blockade around Zalara Prime. Admiral, we're looking at nearly 400 enemy vessels now, Brooks reported. They're forming the largest concentration of firepower I've ever seen. Jake looked at his 12 ships and felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. The human fleet was now outnumbered 30-1 by an enemy that was finally taking them seriously. But something in the enemy formation patterns told him that the Krethek still didn't understand what they were facing. They're massing for a conventional battle, Jake observed. Look at those formations. They expect us to line up and trade shots like an old Earth naval engagement. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Price brought up the tactical analysis on the main screen. Admiral, they're concentrating their entire fleet in one location. That gives them overwhelming firepower, but it also makes them vulnerable to the right kind of attack. Jake studied the enemy positions and began to see the opportunity hidden in their massive numbers. The Krethek had never learned that sometimes having more ships could be a disadvantage if they were all clustered together. They were about to receive a very painful lesson in the difference between firepower and tactics. Signal all ships, Jake ordered. We're going to hit them where it hurts most. Target the flagship. The Krethek flagship was a massive vessel over 3 kilometers long that served as the command center for their entire fleet. It bristled with weapons and was surrounded by escort ships, but Jake had noticed something important about its position. The flagship was at the center of the enemy formation, where its own ships would block clear lines of fire. Captain Thompson volunteered the Vanguard for the suicide mission of penetrating the enemy formation and attacking the flagship directly. Her ship was the fastest and most maneuverable in the human fleet, with experimental stealth systems that might let her reach the target. Lavra, this is essentially a one-way trip, Jake warned her. Once you attack that flagship, every Krethek ship in the system will be shooting at you. Understood, Admiral, Thompson replied. But if we can take out their command ship, their whole fleet will be paralyzed. These aliens don't seem capable of independent action. The attack began when the Vanguard activated her stealth systems, and accelerated toward the heart of the enemy formation. Captain Thompson flew her ship through the massive Krethek fleet like a needle threading between giants. The alien sensors never detected her approach. The Vanguard struck the Krethek flagship with every weapon she possessed. Human plasma cannons and nuclear missiles tore through shields that had never been tested against such concentrated firepower. A massive alien ship staggered under the assault as explosions rippled along its hull. "Flagship is heavily damaged," Thompson reported as enemy ships finally began to respond. "I'm seeing secondary explosions, and they've lost main power. But I've got about 50 angry aliens coming my way." The Krethek fleet began firing everything they had at the small human ship that had dared to attack their command vessel. But their massive weapons were designed to destroy other capital ships, not track a fast-moving target. Thompson threw her ship through evasive maneuvers that would have been impossible for any Krethek vessel. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive confusion in the enemy fleet," reported Dr. Kane. "Their communications are breaking down, and individual ships are acting without coordination. I think we just cut the head off their command structure." Jake watched as the massive Krethek fleet began to fall, apart without central leadership. Ships moved in random directions. Some continued bombarding the planet below, while others tried to hunt the elusive human vessels. Their overwhelming numerical advantage became meaningless when they couldn't coordinate their actions. "All ships attack," Jake ordered. "Hit them while they're confused and disorganized." The human fleet fell on the scattered Krethek vessels like wolves attacking a herd of confused animals. Human speed and coordination proved superior to alien numbers and firepower. Ship after ship fell to precise human attacks while the enemy struggled to mount any effective response. The battle lasted 6 hours, and when it ended, the Krethek fleet was in full retreat. Over half their ships had been destroyed or captured, while the human fleet had lost only 2 vessels. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on his bridge and watched the surviving enemy ships jump to hyperspace in complete disorder. "Signal from the planet Admiral," Lisa Park reported. "Elder Zephes wants to speak with you." "Admiral Morrison," came the alien voice filled with wonder and gratitude. "Your people have performed a miracle. The Krethek fleet is broken, and our world is free. How did you accomplish such an impossible victory?" 3 weeks after the liberation of Zelara Prime, a massive alien vessel arrived at the edge of the system flying diplomatic flags and broadcasting peaceful intentions. Admiral Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the UE Seaton as the enormous ship approached. It was easily 10 times larger than any human vessel and seemed to be made of living crystal that pulsed with internal light. "Admiral, I'm receiving a transmission from the approaching vessel," reported Communications Officer Lisa Park. "They identify themselves as representatives of the Galactic Council and request immediate audience with the human leadership." Jake exchanged glances with Dr. Alex Kane, who had been studying galactic civilization through captured Krethek databases. According to their intelligence, the Galactic Council was a loose confederation of peaceful species that had remained neutral during centuries of Krethek expansion. "Grant them permission to approach, Lisa," Jake ordered, "but keep our weapons powered and ready. We don't know if this is a diplomatic mission or something else." The crystalline ship took position near the human fleet and launched a smaller shuttle toward the Titan. Dr. Kane monitored the alien craft with fascination as it moved through space, without any visible propulsion system. The technology was clearly far beyond anything humans or even the Krethek possessed. "Fascinating, Admiral," Kane observed. "Their ship appears to use some form of gravity manipulation for movement. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases." Ambassador Carol Foster had arrived from Earth aboard a fast courier ship 3 days earlier. She was humanity's first official diplomatic representative to alien civilizations, and she looked nervous as she prepared to meet beings from other worlds. Her entire career had been spent negotiating with other humans, and now she faced creatures that might not even think like humans. The alien delegation consisted of 3 beings from different species. The first was a tall, graceful creature that looked like it was made of flowing water. The second resembled a walking crystal formation that sparkled with internal light. The third was something Jake couldn't even begin to describe. It seemed to shift between different forms as he watched. "I am Counselor Vex of the aquatic nereid species," the water being said through a translation device. "I speak for the Galactic Council in this matter of grave concern." Ambassador Foster stepped forward with careful diplomatic protocol. "I am Ambassador Carroll, Foster representing humanity and the Earth Defense Fleet. We welcome this opportunity for peaceful contact between our species." "Peaceful contact," Counselor Vex replied with what sounded like distress. "Ambassador Foster, we have reviewed combat recordings from your recent engagement with Krethik forces. The level of violence displayed by your species is beyond our comprehension." The crystal being identified itself as an eye, architect, and projected holographic images of the recent battle. The recordings showed human fighters destroying Krethek ships and Marines boarding enemy vessels. To the peaceful aliens, it looked like scenes from their worst nightmares. Your warriors killed thousands of sentient beings without hesitation. The architect stated, "Your tactical doctrine appears designed specifically for the systematic destruction of other intelligent life. How can you call this peaceful contact?" Ambassador Foster looked to Jake for guidance. The human military actions had been necessary to save the Zelani, but explaining that to species that had apparently never experienced warfare would be difficult. "Counselor Vex," Foster said carefully, "the Krethek were committing genocide against the Zelani people. We intervened to prevent the complete destruction of their civilization. Our actions were defensive in nature." "Defensive," the third alien said, in a voice that sounded like wind through leaves. "We have studied your species. Historical records. Humans have been killing each other continuously for thousands of years. You have developed increasingly efficient methods of destruction. This is not defensive behavior." Dr. Kane stepped forward with his analysis of galactic civilization. "If I may, counselors, I believe there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about human nature and development." The alien delegation listened as Kane explained his theory about Deathworld evolution. He described how Earth's harsh environment had shaped humanity into survivors and warriors, while most other species had evolved on paradise worlds where conflict was unnecessary. Your species evolved cooperation because your world supported it, Kane explained. Our species evolved competition because our world demanded it. We're not violent by choice. We're violent by necessity. Counselor Vex seemed deeply troubled by this explanation. "Dr. Kane, are you saying that humans are naturally aggressive because of your evolutionary background?" "Not aggressive," Kane replied. "Adaptive. We learned to fight because everything on our world was trying to kill us. Now we use that knowledge to protect others who never had to learn such skills." The architect projected new images showing various galactic civilizations. Each species had developed on worlds that humans would consider ideal vacation destinations. Gentle climates, abundant resources, and no natural predators. The galaxy was apparently full of beings who had never experienced existential threat. "This explains much about recent events," the architect admitted. "The Krethek Empire has been expanding for centuries by conquering species that had no concept of military resistance. You are the first civilization they encountered that actually knew how to fight." Captain Maria Santos had been listening to the discussion with growing understanding. "You mean every species in the galaxy is basically peaceful? Every species except yours," Counselor Vex confirmed. "The discovery that intelligent life can evolve under such harsh conditions has created enormous concern among the council members. Many believe that humans represent a threat to galactic stability. Ambassador Foster felt the weight of representing humanity's future in galactic affairs. Counselors, we don't wish to threaten anyone. We came here to help the Zelani because they asked for our assistance. We believe in protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The shifting alien finally spoke with a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Ambassador Foster, that statement itself reveals the fundamental difference between your species and ours. The concept of protection implies the existence of threats. Most galactic species have never needed protection because they never faced threats. Jake had been studying the aliens carefully, and now he made a crucial observation. Counselors, what happens when peaceful species encounter aggressive ones, like the Krethek? They are absorbed into the aggressor's empire. Counselor Vex admitted reluctantly. The Krethek Dominion has conquered over 300 civilizations during their expansion. We estimate that trillions of beings have died or been enslaved, and the Galactic Council did nothing to stop them. Foster asked. We lack the capability for military intervention, the architect replied. Our species developed technology for exploration and cooperation, not warfare. The concept of organized violence is alien to our nature. The terrible irony became clear to everyone in the room. The galaxy was full of advanced, peaceful civilizations that were helpless against any species willing to use force. The Krethek had become dominant not because they were particularly violent by human standards, but because they were slightly more aggressive than their neighbors. Counselors, Jake said quietly, how many other species like the Krethek are out there? The aliens exchanged what looked like worried glances. Intelligence suggests there are at least 6 other expansionist empires operating in different sectors of the galaxy, Counselor Vex admitted. The Krethek were not unique in their methods. Foster realized that humanity had stumbled into a galaxy where peaceful civilizations were systematically being destroyed by any species willing to use military force. What you're describing is a slow-motion genocide of every peaceful race in the galaxy. That is an accurate assessment, Ambassador Foster, the architect agreed. Which brings us to the reason for our visit. The Council wishes to formally request that humanity accept the role of protector species for threatened civilizations. The proposal stunned everyone in the room. The aliens were asking humans to become the galaxy's police force using their unique capacity for violence to protect species that couldn't protect themselves. That's an enormous responsibility, Foster said. We're just one species with limited resources. You are the only species with the necessary capabilities, Counselor Vex replied. Your defeat of the Krethek fleet has already changed the balance of power in this sector. Word is spreading that there exists a civilization capable of military resistance. Dr. Kane brought up strategic displays showing the locations of threatened civilizations throughout the galaxy. Dozens of species were currently under attack by various aggressive empires, while hundreds more lived in constant fear of conquest. The mathematics are simple, the architect stated. Without intervention, these peaceful civilizations will be extinct within a few centuries. With human protection, they can survive and flourish. Jake looked at his small fleet and thought about the magnitude of what the aliens were asking. 12 ships against the hostile forces of an entire galaxy seemed impossible. But then he remembered that humans had always accomplished the impossible when the stakes were high enough. Counselors, Jake said finally, humanity will need time to consider this proposal. 6 months after the first contact with the Galactic Council Admiral Jake, Morrison stood on the observation deck of the massive orbital station that now served as headquarters for the Terran Defense Initiative. Through the transparent aluminum windows he could see over 60 ships from a dozen different species. What had started as humanity's small exploration fleet had grown into the galaxy's first truly integrated military force. The transformation had not been easy. Ambassador Carol Foster had spent months negotiating with peaceful alien governments to establish the legal framework for human intervention in galactic conflicts. Many species were terrified of giving military authority to the violent Deathworlders. From Earth, others were so desperate for protection that they offered everything they owned in exchange for human security. Admiral Morrison, incoming priority transmission from the Meridian sector, announced communications. Officer Lisa Park from her new position at the station's Central Command Center. Captain Helen Brooks reports successful conclusion of operation. Safe harbor. Jake smiled as he read Brooks' report. The Meridian species had been under attack by a Krethek splinter faction when human forces arrived. Captain Brooks and her squadron had destroyed the enemy fleet in less than 4 hours using tactics that the surviving Krethek described as impossible to counter. Signal Captain Brooks that her fleet is cleared to return to base, Jake ordered. And send my congratulations to General Johnson's Marines. Another successful operation. General Kate Johnson had become the most famous human in the galaxy after establishing the Deathworld Corps. Her elite Marines traveled from system to system training local security forces and responding to emergency situations. The sight of human soldiers had become a symbol of hope for threatened civilizations across 3 sectors. Dr. Alex Kane approached with his daily intelligence briefing. His analysis department now included experts from over 20 species, all working to understand the changing balance of power in the galaxy. The peaceful aliens brought knowledge and technology, while humans provided tactical expertise and leadership. Admiral, we've confirmed reports of the Void Swarm moving into the Outer Rim territories, Kane said with obvious concern. Long range. Sensors indicate a fleet of over 2,000 ships approaching from extragalactic space. Jake studied the sensor data with growing alarm. The Void Swarm represented everything the peaceful galactic species feared about Deathworld evolution. They were conquerors from a distant galaxy where only the strongest survived. Unlike the relatively benign Krethek, the Void Swarm showed no interest in subjugation or diplomacy. They consumed entire worlds and moved on. How long before they reach inhabited systems? Jake asked. 6 weeks at their current speed, Admiral, Kane replied. The outer colonies are already evacuating, but there are billions of civilians who can't be moved in time. The threat had galvanized the peaceful species like nothing in their history. Elder Zephys now led a coalition of 12 civilizations that had formerly requested human protection. A ceremony held on rebuilt Zilara. Prime had marked humanity's transition from explorers to the galaxy's primary military force. Admiral Morrison, came a familiar voice from the communication system. This is Elder Zephys transmitting from the council chambers on Zilara Prime. The assembled representatives have reached a unanimous decision. Jake activated the main display to show the alien leader addressing a massive gathering of species from across the galaxy. Beings of every imaginable form had come together to face the approaching crisis. In the center of the assembly stood the small delegation of humans who had become their protectors. The Void Swarm approaches our peaceful worlds with the intent to destroy everything we have built, Elder Zephys announced. We who chose cooperation over conflict find ourselves facing extinction, but we are not alone. The humans from the Deathworld called Earth have shown us that strength can be used to protect rather than conquer. The assembled aliens turned to. Look at Ambassador Foster, who stood with quiet dignity before representatives of hundreds of civilizations. In her hands, she held a document that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. By unanimous consent of the Galactic Assembly, we formally request that humanity accept the role of guardian species with full authority to defend peaceful civilizations against external threats, Elder Zephys continued. We offer our technology, our resources, and our loyalty in exchange for your protection. Foster looked directly into the camera, knowing that billions of humans on Earth were watching this historic moment. On behalf of humanity and the Terran Defense Initiative, we accept this responsibility. We will stand guard so that peaceful species can continue to exist without fear. The cheers from the assembly echoed through space as Jake received confirmation that Earth had approved the Guardian protocols. Humanity would expand their military forces with technology and resources provided by their new allies. In exchange, they would protect over 300 peaceful civilizations from any aggressive threat. Admiral incoming flash traffic from Earth Command, Lisa Park announced. And new battle groups are jumping to our position now. Jake watched through the observation windows as space filled with the light of arriving ships. The combined human and alien fleet now included vessels using technology that had never been tested in combat. Zalani energy shields protected human hulls, while Architect targeting computers. Guided human weapons systems. Captain Maria Santos had been promoted to Admiral and now commanded the Rapid Response Fleet. Her ships patrolled the neutral zones, ready to respond to distress calls from anywhere in the galaxy. The mere presence of human vessels had become enough to deter most aggressive species from attacking their peaceful neighbors. Admiral Santos reporting successful deterrent patrol in the outer spiral, came her transmission. 3 separate hostile fleets withdrew when they detected our presence. No shots fired. The psychological impact of human military success had spread throughout the galaxy. Species that had terrorized their neighbors for centuries now avoided any system under human protection. The Deathworlders had become boogeymen in the nightmares of aggressive civilizations. Admiral Morrison were receiving multiple distress calls from the projected path of the Void Swarm, reported Kane. 17 different species are requesting immediate evacuation. Assistance. Jake looked at the tactical displays showing the massive alien fleet approaching inhabited space. 2,000 ships crewed by beings evolved in a galaxy where only predators survived. They would show no mercy to the peaceful civilizations in their path. Signal all commands, Jake ordered. Operation Guardian Shield is now active. All available ships to form up for fleet engagement. The human forces began moving into position for the largest space battle in galactic history. Ships from dozens of species joined the formation as peaceful civilizations contributed everything they had to the defense effort. Engineering crews worked frantically to integrate alien technology with human tactical systems. Admiral Santos arrived aboard her flagship, the UES Liberty, with news from the forward scouts. Admiral, the Void Swarm is even worse than we thought. They're not just conquerors. They're strip mining entire star systems as they advance. Every world they touch becomes a dead rock. Jake studied the approaching enemy and felt the weight of an entire galaxy's hopes resting on his shoulders. The peaceful species had given humans the resources to build a fleet capable of challenging the Void Swarm, but the outcome was far from certain. Elder Zephes is requesting permission to address the fleet before we engage, Lisa Park announced. Put him through to all ships, Jake replied. The alien leader's voice carried across space to reach every human and allied vessel preparing for battle. Humans of Earth, we know that your world made you strong through hardship and danger. We who come from gentle worlds cannot match your courage in battle. But we offer you something else. We offer you a reason to fight that goes beyond survival. Jake looked at the peaceful civilizations counting on human protection and understood what the alien leader meant. Humans had evolved to survive, but they had chosen to protect. That choice made all the difference. You fight not just for victory, but for the future of all peaceful life in this galaxy, Elder Zephes continued. You are our guardians, our protectors, our hope. May the stars themselves guide you to victory. The combined fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying the dreams of billions of peaceful beings. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on his bridge and watched the stars change as they moved toward humanity's greatest challenge. Behind them, the peaceful worlds of the galaxy continued their lives under the protection of the species they had once feared. The Deathworlders had found their purpose in the cosmos. They would stand between the darkness and the light, ensuring that cooperation and peace could flourish under their watchful guard. As Earth appeared on long-range sensors, Jake spoke the words that would define humanity's role in galactic civilization. "We came from a world that tried to kill us every day," he said quietly. "Now we use that strength to ensure no one else has to face that kind of fear alone."